Hello everybody, this is my Cotoneaster or Cotoneaster Cascade tree, full Cascade, which I've been training for many years now. Hopefully you can tell from the size of the drinks can next to the pot an idea of the size of the tree. I'd still like it to, well, I'm still continuing to develop the bottom of the tree, the apex, which is at the bottom, of course. So that's still in development. I would like it to come down a bit lower below this pot, but I wish I'd thought to take a picture of it a couple of weeks ago when it was covered in blossom and bees, but I didn't. But it's covered in young berries at the moment that'll grow to be a glorious red, and it's always quite nice to watch the birds feed on that over the winter. So I'm going to move you in a bit closer, and we're going to tackle this top part of the tree first, which is definitely getting a little bit shaggy. Problem with this part of the tree, well, all of the pads really, is that the pads are starting to get out of shape and starting to lose its identity one into the other, which is an issue you get from time to time, and they need snipping back. We have branches like this one which are going downwards, and get in there, and already that begins to open up this little section here. So it's just a question of bringing these back to the profile of the pads that I wish. I don't want to remove all these berries if I can help it. I'm going to have to lose some, but it's nice for the birds. As I say, it's quite nice to sit and watch them. Put this where I can watch them from a nice warm window, and you can watch the birds feed on the berries. So just going to work my way around, tidying this up. The idea of this being that you've almost got a small tree sat atop the cascade part. There's a piece there I don't want. I'm going to take that out. That's better. Okay, and we have in the back here another branch developing. I felt I needed another back branch. So it's not a fixed tree. Most of my trees aren't a fixed tree, in the sense of they will continue to develop, and let's move you down further down the tree. We have a couple of branches here, but I'm still trying to develop another branch in this position. Here, so this is the beginning of a pad, I hope, in this area here. This one is also possibly going to be a new pad coming back round, although I'm not entirely sure on that yet. So I'm gonna just tidy up these, but I don't want to take up the whole of this video with this particular tree. I've got other cascades that we've been developing, or I've been developing, and I wanted to catch up with them and not make this a 3-hour video, so I'll move this to one side. I'll finish trimming it off camera. Hopefully you're familiar with some of my shrubby honeysuckle trees. If you haven't seen them, if you're not a subscriber, well, subscribe now, but I'll try and remember to put a link to videos on some of my shrubby honeysuckle trees. This is one that's in development as a cascade, obviously. An interesting trunk shape, starting to get some nice pads. A bit of deadwood here that needs some refinement, and then obviously I'm working on creating these pads as the tree grows. It's had a tough life, a lot of deadwood, but I like it, and as I say, it'll make a nice little cascade tree one day, I hope. This is, you know, got some interesting bits to it. So here's another one, the same deal, but I noticed as I got this off the bench today that it had been knocked off at some point, and although I'd glued it back together, the glue has given way. We've had some very hot, dry weather, whether that's what's done it. But again, this is more of a semi-cascade tree. I'm going to have to find a temporary pot to put it in. This is the front, so we have an interesting dome here, and then I'm going to be creating some branch pads in this plane as we go along. So I'm going to have to find a flower pot or something to put that in temporarily. But again, I'll do that off camera. Here we have a saguaro false cypress tree that I've wired into the form of a cascade, and here we have a border collie who is insisting that I take more notice of him than you guys. He hasn't had a walk yet this morning, but we'll get there, won't we? Right, let me get on. So yeah, this is saguaro false cypress. I do like working with these trees. They have very soft foliage. They will back bud onto old wood. If you're very lucky, it'll be in a position you want. You know, you have to take pot luck with that. It isn't always, and they will form quite nice branch pads. I've had a close look at the moment. None of this wire is cutting in, and I don't really think it's had time to set as yet. I'm just going to nip out the ends of some of these branches just to promote a little bit of back budding. Otherwise they're just going to elongate, and obviously I don't necessarily want really long branches in all the places, so that's really all I'm going to do with this. As I say, it's the wire's not ready to come off yet, and I could put a bit more wire on it. It might be nice to wire that branch down into this position, but it's already got a lot of wire on it at the moment, and I think I'd rather take this wire off later in the summer as it starts to cut in, and then rewire it again next year. So that brings us to this little Cotoneaster, It was only created last spring. We have quite an interesting little trunk. This was wired. I'm beginning to develop some branches, so I'm just going to snip a few bits off the bottom. I do want it to develop a little more, but obviously this tree is trying to develop all its branches at the base at the moment, and ideally I'd like some of these branches to begin to come out and form pads. And it's also grown this top piece up a little bit too much, so I'm going to start cutting this back slightly, and I'm also going to shorten it back to here. Hopefully that'll push some of the energy back down. I'm going to take some of these pieces off in order to expose that nice curved line there. And maybe that piece as well. Okay, so if we go with this as being the front of the tree, and obviously this will develop into our apex, and then we can fatten up this part. Maybe next spring it'll go into a slightly larger pot, but this one is just got one flower bud left, so hopefully you can see that all right. Very pretty, very delicate flowers. So imagine if the whole thing gets covered in flowers. It's a real bee magnet, and it's very pretty. This here is a little sucker from an apple tree in the garden. The apple tree was here. It's an eating apple. Was here when we moved in many years ago. Throws up a load of suckers every year, and I thought, why not try a few bonsai from that. So I've got a few going, but I decided I wanted to try this into a cascade. So as you can see, it's very, very healthy, but also a lot of top growth and growth at the bottom, but very little in between. So I'm going to cut it back quite hard. It's very healthy, I'm sure it can take it. And I'm also going to cut back at the bottom here and hope that that'll force a few branches to sprout along this line. This is my perceived front at the moment, but obviously I'd like more branches. If this doesn't work, what I might do in future years is allow something like this to develop, and then we can try some approach grafting, but we'll try it the old-fashioned way first. It's got some potential. Actually, I think I might shorten this top back further. Yeah. Okay, so this is a little goat willow, and I did wire this piece, if I remember correctly. I certainly wired this into this nice little angle with the idea that this would be my front, and at the moment it's stayed in that position, but we've got a lot of growth top and bottom. So again, same as with the apple, I'm going to be shortening back some of these pieces. We want to create some branches. We certainly don't need branches growing straight up. they're not terribly exciting at the moment, looking at that like that. Excuse my arm. I am going to put a little piece of wire, because I think it would be nice to bring this top part into this position, kind of mirroring the trunk line there. And I think a nice simple way of doing that will be simply a loop of wire and that just holds that into that position, and that will set, and that will be an interesting counterpoint, I think, to the trunk line here. Another piece of dye back there, but we'll get rid of that. I'll just shorten that off. This is a juniper. I don't know the species, I'm afraid. The label's long lost to time, the name long lost to my memory. But it's one of the prostrate ground cover type junipers that people plant on banks, and it sort of flops over and lays along the bank. As you can see, its branches are very flexible. And it happily took some wiring into this downward position. I'm really quite happy with the sinuousy curves, even if I do say so myself. And although I envisaged this as being my front initially, if you look at it from this angle, it also has some potential. Again, you can see the trunk slightly better. An issue that I have ongoing with this tree is because of its downward habit. It puts out a lot of its growth in a downward plane, so that needs to come off from time to time. And it does need wiring to bring the branches back up from time to time. But yeah, it makes an interesting cascade tree. Apologies, that's my new neighbours, small children. They're very happy a lot of the time, and lucky them, I say. So yeah, so that's another tree I need to be doing some work on at the moment. This branch in particular is quite heavy. It's got quite a lot of cones coming, so we'll get rid of those. That's helping to weigh it down, and that helps to show off a bit of this trunk as well. One thing I don't like about working with this juniper is that it's very spiky and quite hard on the fingers, unlike the saguaro cypress, which I know I've talked about before. And that's almost like stroking a pet. The foliage is so soft on those. But yeah, so next time you can get to a garden centre, or if you see one online, think about prostate juniper for a cascade project. Let's give you a 360 on that one. I really do want to get it into a nicer pot, a deeper pot. I do have a blue, very nice coloured blue glazed cascade pot. It might be about the right size, but I'm not happy with the colour combination. I think this definitely needs a more earthy colour. So we'll see what Christmas or my birthday brings, perhaps. Okay, so back finishing up with the large Cascades as promised. As always, I keep seeing little bits I've missed, but you know, it's not a one and done process. As I've said before, you know, you're constantly just taking out little pieces that are growing out of the lines that you've established, and so yeah, I'll need to keep coming back and keep trimming from time to time. I'm still unsure about keeping this branch in the longer term, but I am going to keep it in the short term. Desperately don't want to knock this particular little branch, because I know I want a branch in this plane here, but I'm just going to put a little piece of wire on this piece just to move it back into a position that where it isn't being completely shaded out by this upper branch here, and it might be that I do want to keep it just had to come into this plane here. So there. So try and move you out without shaking you up too much. So if we move back the camera a little more, a little more, you should have an entire view now. So yes, there is the tree all trimmed up apart from that piece. I just want to expose the trunk a little more there. Hopefully I haven't lost so many berries that the birds don't enjoy it this year. So, and as I say, this is my preferred front. See, yes, you can see that. Even though I could just trim back the corner of this branch here, just a little more. Allows you to see a bit more of the trunk. Okay, so that's it for catching up with the Cascades for May. This will probably be the last video I make in May. Leave it a couple more days, we should be into June. Thank you all for watching in these troubled times. Please do take care of yourselves. Stay safe.